All right, so Darrell, why a National Medal of Honor museum? Why in Texas? And is this the only one?
Yeah, it's a great question. There are a couple smaller Medal of Honor museums that are out there across the country, and there's obviously some museums that have exhibits that are focused on the Medal of Honor. But a National Medal of Honor museum, this will be the first one. Arlington, Texas, currently being constructed right now. It's actually a three-pronged project. It's going to be a museum and an institute, a leadership institute, co-located in Arlington, Texas. And then we're also going to be building a monument in Washington, D.C. But surprisingly enough, there's not a National Medal of Honor museum. So we're going to be the first one.
So this is the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation. Is that right?
Well, the foundation covers that three-pronged project: the museum, the institute, and then the monument.
Okay.
But yes, the National Medal of Honor Museum will be built in Arlington, Texas. It's going to be right beside AT&T Stadium, Globe Life Field, where the Texas Rangers play. So it's an ideal location. They did a nationwide search for the location. They looked California, Texas, Colorado. It actually boiled down to Denver, Colorado, and Arlington, Texas. Fortunately, Arlington, Texas won out.
Did Jerry Jones have anything to do with that?
Yes, he sure did. His family, huge Patriots. That family, I can't say enough great things about the Jones family. His daughter, Charlotte Jones, is the chairwoman of our board. Had a meeting with her today, actually, for a few hours on finishes at the museum. Such great attention to detail. But yeah, the Jones family have donated $20 million to the foundation. So they're huge supporters. Wow. Yeah, huge supporters. But the Texas area, I think everyone knows, stereotypical Texas is a very patriotic state, which is true. But we're so strategically located close to Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, Dallas Love Field. The Dallas-Fort Worth metro area is like the fourth largest metroplex in the country. 8 million people. Texas just hit 30 million people for state population, which, is followed by, California. They've been over 30 million for some time now. So I think pre-COVID, Texas is getting 50 million visitors to that area.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that went into that decision when it actually came down to Denver versus Arlington. And talking to some of my colleagues that have been there for a while, it's kind of interesting that it was the Jones family pushing for this project, Arlington, Texas, versus like Peyton Manning and some of the big names from Denver. So that interesting dynamic. But fortunately, we went out. Yeah.
So you have to be a little bit of a Cowboys fan, Troy. You got like the Cowboys a little bit.
Do I?
Yeah. Well, you got to.
Yeah. In
I
Washington,
guess.
there's a thing called NBD, never been to Dallas, because we have tons of Dallas fans. But they've never been to Dallas.
Yeah, we definitely have to be Cowboys fans. I feel like, we just had our salute to service game in December, where the National Football League, remembers and honors our military folks. So we had we had some Medal of Honor recipients that showed up. I think like 15 to 17 Medal of Honor recipients that were there for the game, and it was extremely powerful.
So what can someone, if I was going to visit it, which I will when it's open, what should I expect? And then what should a Medal of Honor recipient expect when they go to visit?
Yeah, it's interesting. We have a podcast. If I could give a little plug to our podcast, it's called Mission Inspire. And for the past few podcasts that's been done, we've had some of the living Medal of Honor recipients that have been on there. And it's, short podcast, 30, 45 minutes. And it's interesting to hear their feedback when Mo Barrett is the podcast host, and she says, "Hey," she's talking to a Medal of Honor recipient, like, "Hey, what do you want to see when the museum's built in Arlington, Texas?" And it's less of, the action that happened in Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan. They want to talk about those values We talk a lot about 6 values: courage, sacrifice, commitment, integrity, citizenship, and patriotism. And they are interested in those values. They're interested in education. They're interested in character development with the youth. Like, that's their angle. That's what they're really what they're really big on. But so I just think that's an interesting, that's an interesting way that they look at it. But for someone like you and your family that comes down, it's not going to be like a typical museum that you might think. Going through the exhibit deck, we're going to have like 30,000 square feet. It's not going to be chronological. Like, when you first get up there and you start walking around, you're not going to hit the Civil War time period and then, end up at GWAT, Iraq, Afghanistan. It's going to be more biography, more stories and the values. And we're going to focus on some key recipients, which is really hard to do for our content team to really get those recipients that will resonate and to hear their story and to be inspired by their story. I think it's going to be really powerful.
So which Medal of Honor recipient or recipients resonates most with you, or do you kind of, I don't know, maybe you got a favorite or something?
Yeah, it's a great question. I tell my colleagues on the staff all the time, I spent 26 and a half years in the Army. I was only ever around one Medal of Honor recipient, and that was Bob Howard. He was a Vietnam era Special Forces Medal of Honor recipient. Absolute beast. I think I was maybe 10 years in the service. So that was the only one in 26 and a half years. And that was just at a function. Mm-hmm. And it was like, hey, don't talk to this guy. Don't ask him for a picture. Don't ask him for an autograph. Just stay away from him. But that was the only recipient I was ever around. So now that I'm at the foundation, we see a lot of the recipients. We interact with a lot of the recipients. So that's always interesting for me. But as far as trying to pick out one recipient, they're all just, amazing, humble people. Kyle Carpenter, Marine Corps, youngest living Medal of Honor
He's still
recipient.
the youngest?
Yeah, okay. He comes to mind. And he's just such a humble guy.
Yeah, I like him.
Yeah, but I would say the one Medal of Honor recipient that really resonates the most with me is Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez. And of course, he's deceased now. But he was Special Forces, MACV-SOG, and his action was in Cambodia. I think it was back in '68. But his story is so powerful, and I think our country could just learn so much from his story. Roy was Indian, Mexican. That was his background, and he dealt with some discrimination. He was an orphan. He didn't do great in school. He entered the Army. He just had a love for his country, even though his country didn't treat him that well. Yeah. He had such a love for his country that was so powerful. And then once he started serving, his first tour in Vietnam, he was wounded so bad. The doctor said, and this is before he was Special Forces. I think he was infantry. He was wounded so bad. The doctor said, "Hey, Roy, you're done with the military. You're never going to walk again." So not only did he overcome that, he basically taught himself how to walk again. And then once he was able to walk, he was cleared for service. And then he tried out for Special Forces and made Special Forces. And then his action, he was shot, he was blown up, he was stabbed, hand-to-hand combat. So grievously wounded that, they were zipping him up in a body bag. That's how bad it was. But, and it's unfortunate, Roy was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for years. And I think a lot of that had to do with, because the action was in Cambodia and, the secrecy behind all of that. But
So the Distinguished Service Cross is not even the second highest ranking. That's not the same. Is that what the Army calls the second highest? Is
Yeah,
okay.
that
All
is-
never
that
mind.
was the second
So that's
highest.
like the Navy Cross or the Air Force Cross.
right.
Okay.
But and then once Roy, now that action is just so heroic and so inspiring, right? But a lot of the things that Roy did after he received the Medal of Honor are equally as powerful. He did a lot of talks with students and schools and things like that. So he was a great ambassador for the Medal of Honor, and just his story to basically come from nothing to where he ended up was just such a powerful story that resonates a lot with me.
When did he die?
I think it's been several years. Yeah.
Did he receive it much later than the award? Because I feel like I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I believe he received it from President Reagan, so it was in the
Oh, okay.
yeah, it was 10, 15 years later.
Okay. I've had Herschel Woody Williams
Oh man.
on my show and Sammy Davis. I think those are the only two Medal of Honor recipients I've had. And Sammy Davis, the thing I remember about him the most is he was talking about when he came home from the war, from Vietnam, and they were in San Francisco, and all the protesters were there. So imagine what they've come from, and then here he is in his own country, and he's not as safe even. And I said, "Did you look him in the eye?" And he said, "I looked every one of them in the eye." It was awesome the way he said that when I was talking to him.
Yeah.
And then Woody Williams, obviously, he's got the West Virginia connection like you.
Yep.
And that guy was so funny because he was a country boy, and he didn't know where Japan was. He'd never heard of it, I don't think. And he was like, I didn't know where California was. I mean, he was just like, I'll join, and I'll go wherever. Okay, wherever that is. Yeah, let's go. And here he is, ends up getting the flamethrower. Do you know about him? He has a flamethrower.
Yeah,
Nobody even
on
teaches,
Iwo Jima.
Yeah, nobody even teaches him how to use it. They have to figure it out, right? And he
Yeah.
uses that to kill the enemy.
And clear the Japanese pillboxes.
Yeah.
The bunkers. It's amazing. And Woody tried to serve his country, earlier, but he had the height restrictions. He wasn't tall enough.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he tried to join, and then it took a couple of attempts before he was finally able to join. But that's another recipient that did so much for Gold Star families and veterans, and he just continued to serve.
Yeah.
Just so powerful. That was a big hit.
If you're in town and have free time tomorrow, you may want to go down to the park. There is the Gold Star Family Memorial of Woody Williams Foundation that they put up in October of 20.
Which park?
What park is that? Is it just the Veterans Park? It's downtown. We're
I'm
in
going to that
Huntsville.
Veterans Museum tomorrow. I think it's a Veterans Museum somewhere around here.
Well, there's something down. I'm already forgetting the name of it, but it's got several statues. It's got some aircraft. It's all outdoors. It's right off one of the interchanges of the interstate there in the parkway, but I believe it's Veterans Memorial Park, I think is what you call it. And then Woody's, the Gold Star Family Memorial is in there too.
Yeah, so that had to have been a really cool experience to talk to Woody and Sammy. That's really cool.
Yeah. Sammy and I have a mutual connection because I've been out to California a few times to speak, and you know what's funny is a lot of us. I'm from Alabama, and you hear California, and you think, they don't love our country, that kind of thing. But
Right.
man, it's not. I mean, yes, there's some of that, of
Sure.
course, but up there in that area where I've been several times, I mean, they are the most patriotic, God-fearing, just military loving and supporting people I've ever been around. A lot of farmers. It's up there in that Central Valley. You get it's basically 80 miles east of San Francisco. Just awesome people.
Yeah.
And Sammy is from up in that area, and so yeah, it was great to talk to him.
Yeah. I mean, the whole stereotyping. I mean, I'm coming to Alabama today. I haven't really spent a lot of time in Alabama, so I didn't really know what I was getting getting myself into. But this area, I mean, I've only been on the ground for a few hours, but man, this is a great area. I was making jokes pulling into the neighborhood, like, "Hey, is my car going to be safe?" Obviously, I knew it was going to be safe. It's a great neighborhood, great houses. Just man, it's a cool area. I'm excited to go drive around tomorrow.
Yeah, it's a pretty area.
Yeah.
So what else about the Medal of Honor Museum do you want people to know? Because you're traveling the country now, talking about it, I think, and pumping it up.
Yeah, Chris Cassidy is our president CEO. Interesting background. We were talking a little bit about it before the show, and hopefully we can get Chris on this show at some point.
Yeah,
I think he'd be
that'd be great.
Yeah, Chris, former Navy SEAL, NASA astronaut, MIT grad. Great guy. He's leading the way. But he's our primary spokesman. But, we're just trying to get the word out. We're still fundraising. We still have a lot of money to raise. We're like 40 million plus that we still need. So that's an ongoing effort. We need more friends. We need to get the word out. That was one of the things I learned when I worked at the Museum of the Bible. I was there during construction phase, grand opening and opening. And even though we were building this museum, this $550 million museum in Washington, D.C., a couple blocks south of the Capitol, we'd been there for a couple of years. People still didn't know. Like, you could drive like a mile away, and it's like, you guys are building a what in Washington, D.C., a Museum of the Bible? So yeah, definitely, I think the best thing that we can do is continue to talk about the foundation and the museum and get the word out. But I think a lot of people, the education, the character development, the values, something that's unifying, not dividing. This transcends politics. It's not like every Medal of Honor recipient is a conservative or a Democrat, or this transcends politics, bipartisan. We want to bring people together. We want a wholesome place where you can bring your family and get a great experience and just be like, wow, that was awesome.
What are the rules for? I've talked about this before with some people, but I don't remember. Let's take Kyle Carpenter, for instance. Could be anybody. He's young. I don't know what his rank was when he was injured and later received the Medal of Honor. Let's say he was I don't know, an E3. I don't know what it was, but if you get the Medal of Honor and you're physically able to go back into service, what are the rules there? When do you wear the medal? When do you not? And how do people treat you differently? How does that work?
Well, I think some people treat it different. We still have 3 active duty Medal of Honor recipients that are still serving. So I do think that the Department of Defense wants to try to keep our recipients safe and alive. Obviously, they don't want to put them in harm's way. So I think there is some considerations there for our active duty, still serving recipients. But as far as some of the certain rules, I'm not really for sure. Just being around some of the recipients, I know some are fine with wearing, the Medal of Honor around their neck, and others don't really like to wear it that much. So, but I know there are there's definitely some policies and procedures and things like that for that, but not really 100%. Still learning on some of those things.
Okay. So should we move on? Anything else on the Medal of Honor?
Yeah, you can go to our website. I mean, like I said, we're still looking for friends. We're looking for partners. I'm wearing Black Rifle Coffee Company shirt today. They're one of our big partners. Haven't had a chance to meet Evan Hafer yet. Their leader. I've met Matt Best. I've met him a couple of times. Matt Best, great. Those are just great dudes, great patriots, and we have a strong partnership with Black Rifle, and we're very appreciative of that. But you can go to our website, mohmuseum.org. You can see what we're doing. You can see the 3 different parts of the project: the museum, the institute, and the monument. We have a little gift store on there if you want to buy some hats or something like that. some coffee mugs. We're always looking for donors. So yeah, check it out. That's one of the hats right there. It's one of the
Yeah,
coins
so
too.
let's see if I can get this on camera.
Yeah, if you want a hat,
Appreciate
coin,
that,
and then we
yeah.
have the pins too.
Yeah,
So you
got some pins. And then
got some swag there.
Yeah, nice to have that coin.
Yeah, it's a really neat coin. That's a very, very popular item. The coin and the coffee mug for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And you can follow us, the folks out there listening, you can follow us on social media. There's not a lot of Darrell Utts on LinkedIn, so if you wanna follow me on LinkedIn, I do a lot of updates.
Yeah, you're very active on that.
Yep, I typically do. I try to do one major construction site update, at the beginning of the month. So I have a really neat one. For March that's going to be coming out. So yeah, if you guys want to follow me, follow the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation on all the socials. I'm only on LinkedIn, so I don't see what else is going on. Mm-hmm. But we do have a lot of stuff out there if you want to tune in.
What about those shoes? I was wanting a pair of those shoes, those red, white, and blue. I'm kidding. But those are awesome. I don't know what the connection is there. Or
Yeah, so that's Darren Davis. That's someone I'm connected with on LinkedIn. I'll give Darren a shout out. He's supporting Woody Williams Foundation and the Congressional Medal of Honor Society. So the proceeds from those shoes are going back to those foundations, and we do have a relationship. He sent, you might have seen the picture on LinkedIn. He sent Chris and I a pair of those shoes. So those are some really cool shoes, and maybe I can reach out and get you guys connected.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
No, they are great. That's a great gift, and so I love them.
Yeah, those are really cool.
Let's see. Let's go on to you, like prior to the National Medal of Honor Museum Foundation, maybe way prior, because I know you have a career since the Army and before now, but you were in Special Forces, the Green Beret.
Seems like forever ago, but yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much that we won't be able to cover, but maybe we go to your deployment at least around 2006, and that was Iraq. And your ODA was awarded the Thorn Award. It's the Thorn Award, right?
Yes.
And in 2006. And by the way, who names these missions? We got Operation Thor's Hammer. We got Loki.
We named those missions.
Parliament. Heike. I don't know what how do you say that one?
Yeah.
Anyway, you've got Operation Omega. One of these. So this is this like a 12-month deployment?
No, this was January to August of 2006. So it was 8-month deployment.
Oh, okay.
And it was a very, very interesting deployment for sure.
And it was. I mean, you were super active.
Oh yeah. We were after it.
So this one, Operation Parliament. It says y'all received time-sensitive information of the abduction of a female Iraqi parliament member.
Yeah.
And I'll just skip down, and basically y'all got messages to the kidnappers that it was in their best interest to release the hostage to avoid further offensive operations against them. The hostage was later released unharmed. What was said, because they tone it down here, it was in their best interest, but what was said, and how did y'all get them to listen and to release her?
Yeah, interesting story, and we have to leave some things out because of the sensitivity. But what happened on that, we got the information. It was time sensitive, so Special Forces is known for their planning and, the preparation and all that. So time sensitive, it kind of takes away all of that. It's like, hey, we have to go, like we have a location of a hostage. So from what I recall on this one, because, several years ago, but I'll never forget this one because of a certain incident. But where they were actually holding her was a little bit north of Sadr City. So just an absolute rat nest of an area. And we linked up quickly with our coalition forces, and we said, hey, we have a time sensitive target. We have an Iraqi hostage. This is where we think she is. And our army counterparts are like, you guys are going to need tanks. And it's like, well, if we have tanks, then there's no reason, as soon as we start getting close, like we're not going to have a shot. So we're going to try to do our vehicles, and we're going to kind of do an offset, kind of like a VDO, a vehicle drop off, and we were going to get close and kind of walk in.
Is this an urban area?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. It's urban. So our tanks were like, okay, but it's a rough area, IEDs and all, so we had a lot of threats that we were dealing with. And
Now,
that's
sorry, Darrell, to understand Iraq at this time in 2006, I think it was very, very active and very dangerous, wasn't it? Wasn't it a very busy time then?
It was dangerous, violent time period. We got there in January, and Iraq was just dangerous as is. When we got there, 22 February of 2006, Sunni Al Qaeda militants bombed one of the largest Shia mosques in Samarra, and it ignited a civil war in Iraq. So on top of everything that was going on, all of the violence just as is with a war zone, then we had a civil war that broke out on the 22nd. So it like made everything like a million times worse. I mean, it was terrible. Sunnis killing Shia, Shias killing Sunni. Everyone hated us. That was like the one thing that they actually agreed on, that they all hated Americans and let's kill Americans. So it was a game changer. 22 February 2006, game changer. And we were in Baghdad, right at the center of gravity. So yes, you're right. It's a very violent, dangerous time period. A lot of killings and kidnappings and torture, just unimaginable things. So going back to the mission, we were getting close to the target, and we hit an IED, improvised explosive device. And I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they asked the guy, like, as far as like, man, what the one time that you like really had some fear, and I'd say for me that was probably it.
You're saying when you hit it or before you hit it?
When we hit it.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was the third vehicle. Our first vehicle hit. Actually, the IED hit the first vehicle, but I was the third one back. But still, being part of that, so close, and you see it, it's kind of like you have I'm sure it was only a couple of seconds, but you're just there, and you're like, wow, we just hit an IED. Mm-hmm. You don't forget that. You don't forget that feeling, and
probably the taste and smell too.
Yeah,
right?
The explosion and the sound, and bodies, and all of that stuff going on. So at that point, it was like, get those tanks up here. We're getting close. We're going to need these tanks. But we pretty much blew the target at that point. That was the reason. They had the early warning, and they knew that we weren't going to be able to get close without them knowing. So, but they knew that we were coming, that we were after. We wanted this person back. She was important.
Had you already given them the message?
Oh, no.
Okay,
no.
they didn't have it yet. All right.
Yeah, they didn't have it yet, but they knew, they're like, hey, we know who you are, and we're coming. We just got a little off track on this one. Mm-hmm. But we were able to use our network, and I can't really get into specifics, but we were able to use our network to communicate and kind of send a signal like, you don't want to do this. And it worked.
I love that story. I mean, what little that we know about it and what you can say.
Yeah.
But that's the United States that I grew up with. I mean, as a young teenager with Desert Storm and Desert Shield.
Yeah.
I mean, Storm and Norman. I mean, I was like, hey, the U.S. we kick some butt and we take some names, and so that's a great story. What are some of the leadership lessons that you learned from Iraq, and how many times did you go to Iraq?
So I had 4 rotations to Iraq. I was there, and one of the rotations, I was there 2003, and then my second rotation was 2004 to 2005. So that was my second rotation, and then I started. I was somewhat senior when the war broke out in '03. For '06, I was a team sergeant, so I was leading a Special Forces Operational Detachment Alpha in 2006. So that, we were in Baghdad in '06, and it was, Donkey Kong crazy. I was a team sergeant in 2007. That was another 6 to 8 month rotation where we did, we did a lot of damage that rotation as well. So, I did four trips to Iraq.
Golly.
Yeah.
What are some things that stand out though with what you learned?
I would say I wrote some of them down before we came in today. But leading by example, I think was a big one. And what I mean by that, in '06 and '07, I was a team sergeant. So I was senior, but I still took turns being a gunner in the turret. I wasn't always sitting in the up-armored Humvee driving the streets of Baghdad, which is a totally crazy, different experience when you think, all right, we're going to get in a vehicle and we're going to drive on this road, and there's a chance that we're probably going to get blown up. I mean, you really have to wrap your mind around that. And
That's
you have
what
to control.
I mean, Troy, can you imagine that? I think about that all the time. Is when y'all, the enemy, lots of times they know the path you take when you leave your base.
Oh yeah.
And every day are you going to hit one? And I don't care how up armored your vehicles are.
And that's a great point. I'd like to touch on that one.
Do it.
That's a great point. Because we were playing chess this whole time. Like it was PhD level chess. We started out, like when we did the initial invasion into Iraq, we had Toyota Hilux trucks. There's no armor at all. And then, we had the Humvees, and we took the doors off. So we had no armor, no doors, and we were porcupined out, what we called porcupined out. So you had weapons out, and you're scanning for threats and things like that. But you had no protection. So we're constantly doing this little, chess maneuvering. So then they started rolling out the improvised explosive devices. It was a way to kind of battle us because we had all of this technology and all of these things. It's like, well, let's see how they do with these bombs.
Are these all mostly pressure plates, or they use a cell phone, or how were they?
They were using all kinds of different devices. So then we started like, okay, we're losing a lot of guys, losing a lot of limbs. So it's like, okay, we're going to go up armored, and we're going to have armored vehicles. And then for us, I remember it was like, okay, we got the up armored vehicles. Speed's going to be our security because we traveled in small packages. We would travel like 2-3 vehicles, where most of the regular Army and Marine Corps convoys are like these huge convoys, like 10, 20 vehicles or whatever. We were like in 2. So it's like, hey, speed's our security. We're hauling ass, down these main supply routes, these MSRs. So that was our security. Well, then the enemy they have a vote. So they're like, okay, so these guys are doing the whole speed thing, and then they came out with the explosive foreign projectiles, EFPs, and they used like garage door technology, like the laser thing. So as soon as your vehicle kind of hits that laser, it doesn't matter if you're going 20 miles an hour or you're going 60 miles an hour, you're eating some steel that's getting shot through that vehicle.
Never heard of those.
Yeah, the EFPs. Yeah, and that was all Iran. I mean, that was all Iranian made.
Okay.
Yeah, they were doing their own proxy war. Yeah, that was a whole different story too. So our strategies were always changing. But there was a big threat. So going back to the leadership lesson, it was important for me to be a leader. And like, hey, I'm not going to be sitting in the up armored vehicle. I'm taking a turn on the gun in the turret because that's typically the most dangerous place. Something, it could even be a vehicle accident where you hit another car, which we had vehicles that slammed into us. And, there's a lot of things that happen in Baghdad. There's so many people. So I think leading by example is really important, and doing the hard stuff. Just because you're a supervisor or manager and it's like, oh, I'm not going to get my hands dirty.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't work on a special forces team. A big lesson I also learned: control what you can control. there's some things, and I have to remind myself, in my current role as the chief of business operations, I constantly have to remind myself, because there's some things that are just outside my control. I need to focus on my job, do what I'm supposed to do, and I can't worry about, what someone else is doing. I just
Do you ever say, "Hey, nobody's dying, nobody's losing a leg today, so I think we're all right"? Do you ever
oh yeah, I say that to because Chris Cassidy's my boss and he's a former Navy SEAL, so I'm like, hey man, I think we're all right. No one's shooting at us, so
Yeah.
we're good, right? And he's like, yeah, of course. So yeah, we do kind of have that little joke inside, because there are things that pop up, with there's different politics with nonprofits and stuff like that. So yeah, that is definitely something that we've said to each other probably at least 5 times. But control what you control. You can't fake preparation. Courage is contagious. Calm breeds calm is another one. I think that was a huge lesson, and I think that applies on the civilian business side as well. Calm breeds calm, because if you get people all excited or there's something going on, and then the leadership starts freaking out, then the staff's going to start freaking out, So that was always important, because we were involved in a lot of engagements. I mean, where we were at in Baghdad, 06 and 07, we were both in Baghdad, but particularly 06, we were on the east side of the Tigris River, and it was just, it was Donkey Kong. It was the wild, wild west. So if you were really going to be getting, high stress and all of that, like, the guys see that, then they start getting into that. But if the leader's calm, calm breeds calm,
100%. 100% agree with that. All right, let's see. What else from... Do we have time to talk about without treating it, not giving it, I guess, the time or respect it needs? Your Alive Day. What can you tell us about that, Darrell, or would you rather save that for another time? But I know you almost died.
Yeah,
probably more than once, but this time in particular, you consider it your Alive Day.
Yeah, so my Alive Day it goes back to that 06, that crazy, violent rotation. So my Alive Day is 17 April 2006. And, we were co-located. We weren't in the same compound. We were 2 different compounds, but we had our 101st brothers from Fort Campbell, Kentucky, which I had previously served at before my Special Forces time. So actually, my heart went out to those guys, because they had a different mission. They had a tough mission. They were trying to train the Iraqi army to fight. So, they weren't doing anything unilateral. They had to do everything with the Iraqi army. So that meant when they got into a big gunfight, it wasn't just, U.S. soldiers like, hey, let's go do it. But they had to deal with their Iraqi army soldiers. And a lot of time those guys didn't want to fight. Or sometimes they didn't know how to fight. Or sometimes, maybe they had some
you
bad
couldn't
guys.
trust them.
Yeah, you couldn't trust them, right? Yeah. So we understood they had a tough mission. But 17 April 2006, it was an administrative day for us, which is crazy. To say like, hey, we were doing an administrative day in a combat zone and a very violent, but we had some things that we needed to take care of. We were doing some upgrades to our vehicles. But and I'll cut a lot of the story out and kind of get to the meat. But we left our compound. Our brothers from the 101st were in a good gunfight. We knew it, and we'd ask them if they needed anything. They said no. I was like, okay, cool. So we went to the green zone, which is 10 minutes away, if that. And
why did you go there?
Well, that's where our company headquarters. That's where our bosses were. So we kind of like went there and checked in with them, and I think we had some meetings.
Okay.
So we dropped a couple guys off, and then we were getting ready to go to Baghdad International Airport, taking route Irish, which was one of our favorite routes. And we were going to do turret upgrades, so we had a little bit more protection for the gunners. So it was administrative, no big deal. And then I got another call. We carry these little embassy cell phones in my pocket sleeve, and my team leader was back at Apache. That was our base. and he said, "Hey, the 101st guys just called. They need you guys. Can you guys, where are you at? Can you do it?" So we pulled off the side of the road, and that was kind of the rule. Like, hey, man, if you guys need us, we'll be there. But just don't call us for no BS. Like, if you need us, we're going to bring it, and we're going to do some damage. So nothing silly, but if you need us, we're going to bring it. But I got on the phone, and then I checked in with the guys, because that was another kind of leadership lesson for me. Like, when you're asking guys to risk their life and you know that you're going into a dangerous situation, and keep in mind, this was a situation we didn't have to do it. There was nobody saying like, hey, you are directed. This was our decision.
Yeah.
So I felt it was important as a leader to get some buy-in from the guys. And of course, I had a bunch of young, hungry dudes. They wanted to fight.
Of course.
So God bless them. And I checked in with the guys, and they were like, heck yeah, let's do it. So we rolled back to Adamiyah, which is the area that it's a suburb of Baghdad, and it was the last Sunni stronghold in Baghdad. So this is 2006. Baghdad was primarily all Sunni. And then once the war started and Saddam ended up getting captured and all that, the Shia started pushing all the Sunni out. Adamiyah was the last stronghold, and that's where we were. And they had a large Sunni mosque there, Abu Hanifa. So it was a violent place, but we ended up going there 2 vehicles, had 6 Green Berets and 1 interpreter. And this is 17 April 2006. We linked up with the Iraqi army, jumped right into the middle of a big gunfight, AK-47s, machine guns, PKMs, RPGs. It was not harassment fire. The enemy was maneuvering. So that was a little bit different for us. We were getting a lot of harassment fire up to this point. So we ended up linking up with the Iraqi army. We ended up linking up with our 101st brothers, and they'd kind of been stationary for a little while. I feel like they'd lost a little momentum because of what they were trying to, they were trying to gather all the Iraqi armies and inspire some courage. So we had a lot more flexibility because we were unilateral and we were hungry and we wanted to do it. We wanted to fight. So we kind of kicked things off and we just started working some of the side streets. I had some pictures. It'd probably be easier to explain, but we were going down this one main road and then they had all these side streets. And that's where we're getting a lot of contact. So heavy engagement. We dealt with all of that. We eliminated some threats, multiple threats. But as we continued to work into Adamiyah, we got deeper into the city. They started barricading the streets. They were already barricaded. So that's where you hear like an inch here, an inch there. Those were some of the points where I had to get out of the vehicle to clear these obstacles. But they had it set it up so strategically at these crossroads where they could cover the areas, and then our vehicles were back, so we couldn't really support, we couldn't get up there to see them. So I had to get out of the vehicle and expose myself to clear those obstacles, and then we could get the vehicles up with the gun trucks, or the gunners, and they could engage targets or eliminate the threats. So that's when you hear an inch here, an inch there, a lot of those points. And then we got to a certain point where I had a really good engagement with some guys on a rooftop.
Well, that's what I was thinking is surely there's got to be buildings around. So you don't know
It was a
where
360.
people are.
Yeah, it was 360.
Yeah, okay.
And there was just hornets everywhere flying around. But yeah, at some point, at a certain point, we were working our way in. I was engaging a lot of guys on rooftops that were firing down at us, and my gunner was firing a different direction because there was just so many threats. And I really needed my gunner to shift over. So that was another point because I was fighting from the engine block of our Humvee. So I had a little bit of cover. And then finally my gunner realized what was going on. He saw me kind of getting hammered. He was able to flex over. Our vehicle did get shot up so bad it was dead, killed the engine block, so we had to tow it back, and that was a 2-hour engagement, and that's my live day for sure. Kind of abbreviated, but yeah, it was a tough day.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
Very,
tough
very
day.
good. So, did you practice calmness that day as a leader, or is that one of those times where maybe you learned that you had to be calmer?
No, I definitely practice the calm breeds calm. You know, even when we lost our engine block, you know, our trail vehicle was calling up. As soon as they called up and said, "D, you guys are leaking lots of fluids," I got the message. I couldn't relay it to my driver before the engine block, you know, it was dead. So I couldn't even tell him. He was telling me like, "Hey, I lost power, man. I got nothing." And it was like, you know, I think this goes back to you can't fake preparation because we had practiced towing vehicles. Hey, if we have a vehicle that goes down or if we have a vehicle that gets hit with an IED, you know, we're gonna get it out of there. We're gonna treat casualties. We're gonna tow it. You know, all those type of things. So that was just a moment that we had practiced before, and we set up our tow straps and we towed that vehicle out because we were at a point where we were just getting hammered continuously with fire. So we towed it out, and then we just made a call back like, "Hey, get us another vehicle ready because we're coming right back out here because this is where all the action, you know, that's where we wanted to be." So yeah, that was definitely a day that was a calm breeds calm day.
Do you do anything special on April 17th?
Yeah, I typically reach out to my guys via text. I think the last couple of years I might have posted something on LinkedIn. But I typically, reach out to my guys and just say, "Hey, man, glad I was there with you. You know, we did great things, and you know that was a cool day, and you know we kind of have fond memories of it now, looking back."
Okay.
Yeah,
So moving on to when you got out. Now, did you put in 26 years?
26. Yep.
That's great. That's great. And you retired.
Mm-hmm.
What is something that you did to help you with your transition into civilian life?
Man, I'm still a work in progress. I'm still a work in progress, but I think the best thing that helped me with transition because, you know, you probably heard this if you talk to veterans, but you know, when we get toward the end of our time, unfortunately, we try to hide a lot of things that happen to us, and we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to get removed from the team or maybe be viewed as weak, where it's like, oh, this guy has PTSD or TPI or he's going through a divorce. You know, we don't want to be viewed as weak, so we keep a lot of that stuff bottled up. So toward the end of my time, you know, it's like, okay, well, I'm getting ready to retire. I need to do all my retirement physicals. And I went to a TBI clinic. It's called Intemperate Spirit at Fort Bragg. I didn't know I had TBI. I went to the clinic thinking like, I'm just going to go to the clinic and they're going to check me out and say, "Hey, you're good." And it's like, "Hey, dude, you have TBI." And I'm like, "What?" So this is toward the end. So I think they were giving me trazodone or something. I was on magnesium and trazodone and I had a lot of headaches, and I was on all these things, and I was like, "Man, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to, you know, there has to be something else I can do." And I think the biggest thing, what I'm getting at, the biggest thing that really helped me was just trying to stay active. You know, I do a lot of treadmill work. I'm a work in progress, but I think the fitness thing, for me, it's probably a lot more mental maybe for me, but I like to be active. My wife and I, we just bought an elliptical because I was getting a little bored with the treadmill. But that was important for me because I think I went through some time periods where I was up and down, you know, weight wise and some other things. And it was just important for me to try to keep the fitness, do something. And that's really helped a lot with the headaches. I don't take trazodone or magnesium, any of that stuff anymore.
Do you think it's more, is it getting the heart rate up? Is it building the muscle? Do you do it alone, or do you do it with your wife or with buddies?
I do it alone. I have a garage gym. I think
that's what you prefer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I've done the gym stuff before, but after COVID hit or during COVID, I was like, man, once we move from Virginia and we go to Texas, like I want I want a bigger place. I want a movie room. I want
Yeah.
a garage gym. You know, there was a lot of things because of COVID specifically. I was like, I want to be prepared in case we have to go through this nut roll again. But that's something that really, I think it helps me probably more mentally than anything else. It just makes me feel good. I think it gets the endorphins. It you know, I think that is something that's really helped me. And I think a lot of veterans, you know, they spend a lot of time in the military and they have to do physical training. They have to run and they have to ruck and, you know, do all these things, CrossFit, whatever. And then when you retire, you don't have to do that anymore. So I kind of went through that little phase, but now I think that's something that really helps me a lot, man. It helps me a lot. It's just getting active, doing something.
I agree. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, even I don't know if I told Troy. By the way, we're in my buddy Troy By's studio. I know I'm
Thanks,
looking over
Troy.
at him, so Troy's over
Appreciate
here.
you.
And this is Our Town Podcast. I'm sure you can see a logo here somewhere. But so big thanks to Troy. But I was this past weekend last Friday. I was just kind of I was almost at my wit's end. We had a bunch of kids at our house for a party, and they did nothing wrong. They were just typical kids. They did break one of my lights,
Darn it.
you know, the globe thing, and not a big deal. And I've been kind of sick, so that Friday night I told my wife, I was like, hey, I've got to get out, and I'm gonna go for a ruck because I'm gonna go crazy on somebody if I don't do something. She's like, yes, go. So Saturday morning, I got up early. I put on my rucksack. I put a 30-pound plate, and I went for this great walk. And by myself, I had I listened to a podcast. Actually, I finished up one of Troy's, his episode 50. Probably listened to one with you in it, and then part of it I didn't listen to anything. I just listened to the birds, you know. And it was so therapeutic for me.
That's a great word, therapeutic.
I think I came back a new man.
Yeah.
I told my wife I was a new man anyway. So yeah. It did help me. I was calmer that day. I wasn't you know, jumping on the kids and stuff. So you got to have it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
And I can't imagine though when you got the traumatic situations like you've been in though. I mean, I don't know what that's like, but it's even more important. You got to find what helps you heal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think for everybody, it's, you know, it might be something different. But for me, it really helps. Sometimes, like you, therapeutic is such a great word because that's the word, you know.
Yeah,
It's therapeutic for me. Sometimes I go over my notes, you know, because I've been working at the foundation for a year, so there's still a lot of things that I'm trying to learn and pick up on, and we have a ton of work before the museum opens. Scheduled to open early 2025, by the way. But sometimes I go over my notes, just try to stay on top of what I'm trying to get accomplished at work. I just put some butcher block. You guys know what butcher block is? Because my wife didn't know. It's like the big white paper. Yeah. Okay. Just got some of those so I could make some notes for work. Then I got another little project that I'm working on, but I kind of like to tinker around with that when I'm out there on the treadmill or the elliptical. And sometimes I'll listen to podcasts, sometimes I'll listen to music, but man, it really helps me out. And I can tell how my day goes. If I have that workout in the morning, my day it seems to go so much better and the stress levels down, you know. But then if I don't go to the gym, my appetite, you know, it seems like I'm a little bit hungrier or I'm trying to compensate.
Probably crave more junk. Too.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's weird. So yeah, I just, you know, for the veterans out there that are listening, you know, try to find that thing that works for you and keep doing it, man.
Yeah, I think Troy, one thing you do is go for a run, don't you? 4 miles.
That's awesome.
And he's got an awesome gym here at his house too, by the way.
I bet, man. He's got an awesome podcast. So if the gym is anything like that, so I can imagine.
So what about Darrell? What is one thing that the people you work with at the National Medal of Honor Museum, what's something they do not know about you or would be surprised to know about you?
It's a good question. I think they were getting to know me pretty well. I've been there a year, so I kind of came in probably a little bit quiet. Let's see. They might not know that I enjoy watching The Office reruns. I don't know if you guys watch The Office, but The Office cracks me up, man. absolutely
it
cracks
does
me
crack
up.
me
So
up, yeah.
I don't know if people would identify me as like an office guy, but um, that could probably be. I guess
Okay.
that could be one thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite character? Ask
Favorite character? Yeah, on The Office.
Pam, Jim. I mean, they're all Dwight probably just because of his
Of course.
shenanigans. He's got a couple episodes that absolutely crack me up, like the fire day, if you know that episode where he does like the fire alarm and he's got everything locked up so no one can get out, and they all freak out and they're throwing stuff through the window. So yeah, there's
I
some.
always
crazy
love
episodes.
his memes where it's a false.
Yeah.
One of those false memes with him. They're hilarious.
Yeah.
What about you? Books. So, what are some favorite books? Either maybe you've read, you're reading that helped you transition, or maybe with all the traveling you're doing. What comes to mind right now with the
What
books?
I want to ask you guys if you guys both have kids, right?
Yeah.
Boys, young boys.
16's my youngest now. He's got young.
Yeah, his are older than mine. Mine are young. Mine are all young. All boys. He's got a girl and
Okay, I want to share this with you. This is my favorite book of all time, and I was thinking about you guys because I thought you might have younger kids. But have your kids, or did you guys read growing up Where the Red Fern Grows?
mm-hmm.
Man, I think that's my favorite book of all time. I read that as a boy growing up in West Virginia. Old Dan and Little Ann, Coon Dogs. I read that book to my son, and I hope that's kind of like a family tradition. I hope when my son has kids that he reads it.
That's a great reminder. I looked for that to watch it with my kids.
No, man,
years ago,
you
but
want
I
to do the
couldn't.
book first.
Yeah, well, I know. We couldn't find it. So anyway, thanks for the reminder on that.
Yeah, man, Where the Red Fern Grows. But a couple books I read recently. I was talking to you about one, Fearless. Help me pronounce his name. Is it Eric Bleem?
Blim. Yeah,
Blim.
Eric Blim wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah, I sent him a text when I landed. He didn't respond. He's probably busy. I mean, he's a New York Times bestselling
He probably
author.
will. He contacted me. I mean, we talked,
Yeah,
but that was
yeah.
years ago.
Yeah, so I just read Fearless, and I'd been tearing through it, but I got toward the end, and I don't want to, spoiler alert, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but there's some sad parts. So we were talking about that before we started filming, but man, I had some big crocodile tears on the plane flying in from Dallas Fort Worth to Huntsville here, and man, that was a great book, solid book. You know, talk about redemption and just resilience, and man, so many other things. So Fearless, I would definitely recommend.
By the way, Adam's parents have been on my podcast. I interviewed his
Are you
mom
serious?
and dad. Yeah, and it was great. And his mom was just a sweetheart, broken-hearted mother. Anyway,
Wow.
it's a great one.
Wow, that's powerful, man. That's powerful. Another book that I just read, Operation Pineapple Express by Scott Mann.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys familiar with that book? Or
I'm familiar with Operation Pineapple Express, not the book.
okay, you should get that book, and I'm going to get you connected with Scott Mann.
Okay.
Because I recently connected with him. He's doing some great things for the community. I mean, what he did on Pineapple Express is just amazing. And to read, I mean, the book. I thought Scott was a straight shooter, man. He called it like he's a straight shooter.
And this is about getting people out of Afghanistan, right?
Getting folks out of Afghanistan. And he was a straight shooter about it. I mean, it wasn't like it was one of those things about the foundation. Like, it transcended politics. There was blame to go around both sides. It wasn't just one-sided. He was a straight shooter about it, and I respected the heck out of that for that. But man, I read that book, and I experienced a ton of emotions because I never served in Afghanistan. I only served in Iraq. So reading that book, man, it just fired me up. I was like, oh gosh, I can't believe, some of these things that happened. And, I don't want to get political or anything like that, but that was a great book. I want to get you connected with Scott Mann. He's got a play out. It's called Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret. I was so inspired. My wife and I, we flew to Chicago to watch it. Actually, they just released their schedule. They're going to be in San Diego and a bunch of other places across the country. It's a play about healing. I mean, he plays the lead actor. He's the one that did the play, and wrote the play and all that stuff. And it's a very healing, powerful play. And, you know, it takes you through being on a special forces team. Basically, the play starts, Danny's bleeding out. Like he's ready to pass. And he's trying to make his journey to Valhalla or hell. And the play's kind of centered around that. And he's trying to wrap up some loose ends. And he's got a lot of things that he doesn't want to let go from his life.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of goes back into his, you know, training through the qualification course and some of his first deployments and some guys that he might not have gotten along with so well. But it's just it's fascinating. And 1 minute you're like on the edge of your seat and you're just kind of fired up. Then the next minute you got some tears. But there was a gal, and I think that you should watch this play. But there was a gal, her name is Jazz Cannon, and she's an American Afghanistan female. And she stood up at the end because it's such a powerful play and it brings out so much emotion. They have, I forgot what it's called, but they have kind of like a hot wash where the actors all come out on stage, and then they pass out mics to the audience. And we heard from Vietnam vets some of kind of the same thing that you're talking about with Sammy, with the way they were treated and some of the feelings. So it kind of forces out some of these emotions. It's very healing and very therapeutic. And this gal Jazz stood up. I'll see if I can send you the video. But she just said, I'm from Afghanistan, and I want you all to know that everything that you did over there, all your sacrifices mattered so much. Continue to matter. Like, don't let this, you know, what happened with, you know, we all pulled out and all that type of stuff. Like, everything that, all those sacrifices, all of the things that happened over there, they all mattered. They mattered to us. Like, it meant the world to us. And we're still working. We're trying to get a better Afghanistan. Just don't give up on us. She had a very powerful message. I'll see if I can send it to you.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, and she was very articulate. She was very powerful. It was strong. It was strong. I'd love to see if you could get Scott on the show because he's dynamic. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, special forces officer. He's doing a ton of work for the community, doing a lot of healing. So he's a powerful dude.
That'd be great. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And whether he comes here or we do it, you know, via Zoom, either way.
Yeah.
Darrell, what else you got? I want this to be worth your time, you know, to promote the work you're doing and anything else. So,
one more book. We talked about Fearless. We talked about Operation Pineapple Express. Mm-hmm. I just read Burn the Boats by Matt Higgins, and I just consumed that book probably in a day and a half, 2 days. It just came out.
Okay, I've heard of it.
Yeah, man, it's strong. And I went through. I was trying to figure out my note system. I was tinkering around with how I do notes, and I started like a chapter 2 or 3, and I underlined I was like, well, I'm not going to underline very much. I'm just going to underline a sentence or two, and then I went back and I had flipping the whole book. It seemed like it was all underlined, but there's just some great lessons in there about life and doing things. But I want to say I'm really fired up about reading this book, My Brother in Arms. Dad, this is a book that you wrote. Maybe you can speak a little bit on
Who's
this
that
one.
guy?
Yeah, I'm so excited. I felt so bad that I wasn't able to read this book before this podcast. I really wanted to do it, and I do want to say thank you for you and your family. You guys are patriots, and what you all have sacrificed for our country, we owe a huge debt. So I have a lot of gratitude for you.
Thank you.
So if you could talk about this,
Thank
that
you.
would be amazing. Sorry, I was getting a little emotional there.
Well,
man. I appreciate you, man.
I've been reading that book to my boys at night. My wife and I usually take turns putting the kids to bed. They can't go to bed on their own. But it's good anyway. It's a nice thing. And so lots of times
They do grow up fast, man. So
yeah. And she reads them a different book. And I've been reading them that book, their Uncle Mark's book.
Yeah.
And just the last few nights, I've been in the chapter where it goes into detail of his final battle. And I'm kind of blown away. I'm like, wow, that is powerful. That's some great statements by the few people that were there, whether they were in the air or whether they were on the ground. there really wasn't anybody on the ground close by. But it is it's powerful to read what he did there at the end. And as I go back and read the book, there are times where I'm like, I wish I hadn't have done that. I wish I hadn't have said that. Why did I do that? But for the most part, and I don't like to hear myself speak, but for the most part, I am very happy with the book. And when I overlook still some of the errors that are in there, there's a great message, and I did my darn best to not make it a book of a mourning brother praising his perfect brother, because that's not what I ever believed. And there is a lot of praising in there of him, and most of it is from people who came to me without me asking them and saying, I want to tell you about him. And so I did include a lot of their statements, and whether these are high school or people from the military. So put my heart and soul into it. Didn't care one bit if it sold a copy. I prefer it to sell a lot of copies, yes, to get the word out. But it's not. That's not what this book is about. It's having a record, because he didn't have a wife, he didn't have kids, and I knew it would not take long until even in our family nobody would know him. So, and it's already been 12 and a half years. I mean, I've got several nieces and nephews, and all my kids, they never knew their Uncle Mark. And then a few of them barely remember him. So I just wanted there to be a record. Like, hey, this is his life. And when there is a movie made about him at some point, here's the Bible. This is it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you leave a review on Amazon. And
My brother in arms. I can't wait to read this.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to it. And I'll definitely put some comments on LinkedIn and Amazon and all that. Oh man, you even signed it too.
Oh, let me hand you one last thing here.
Man, that
I
means
think I
a
got
lot.
something
Thank
in
you
my
so
pocket
much.
somewhere. Oh yeah, here we go. Well, I'll just leave it in there. But there you go.
Thanks, brother.
You got to have one of those.
Appreciate you, man. That's awesome. I think this is my first combat controller coin. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for coming all this way to be on the show.
Yeah, I want to get you connected with some other folks, man. I'd love to see Chris Cassidy be on your show. I think that'd be powerful.
Okay. I'd love that.
Yeah, and it's so funny to see other people engage with Chris that are so into the space astronaut thing. Like, that's never. I mean, I think it's cool and it's awesome and it's it's super cool, but there's a lot of people that are like really geek out with space, and you can just tell when they're around Chris. It makes me chuckle, man. It makes me laugh. But I think Chris would be a great guest. I'd love to get Scott Mann, because I think you guys would really get along, and hopefully I can help bring some folks on your show, man.
Hey, and if you have a connection to Gary Michael Rose or Mike Rose, he's a Medal of Honor recipient that lives here in Huntsville. And I'd already told Troy I was going to have him here. I was going to interview him, and he hasn't jumped at the opportunity yet. So I have a way to get in touch with him, and I have. And I'm not sure if I need to be very, very persistent or just back off and say, hey, maybe the guy just doesn't want to do it, and I'll respect that. But he lives here in Huntsville. I would love to interview him. And he didn't get the Medal of Honor until President Trump. And this is from Vietnam. I don't know if you know his story, but it sounds incredible, because it was one of the classified missions, and it finally was released, and Trump presented the Medal of Honor to him in about 2016 or 17.
Yeah, I will say a lot of the recipients get pulled in different directions, so I wouldn't take it personal. Sometimes we have a hard time reaching out to some of them as well, and it's just they got a lot going on, and they got a lot of folks that are pulling them in different directions. But I'll see if I can talk to someone from our team and see if they might be able to help you out.
Okay. Hey, it's been an honor. Thank you very much.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.